Good morning. I know
Jacques is here. Good morning.
Yeah.
If you want to get before we throw you on camera, you good? You want to take a deep breath?
A TV moment.
Right.
Well,
let me get yourself in line
get yourself
over there.
in gear.
Hughes Mechanical, our AC partner over here, can help you get ready for football season. It's cool outside. It's starting to get a little crisp outside. The fall is starting to dip into the deep south. So if you want to have your heater serviced or looked at, if you want to have your heater checked, get in touch with Hughes Mechanical Contractors. Maybe not time to start talking heaters. If you still need that AC serviced and want residential and or commercial service, you can trust our friends over at Hughes Mechanical Contractors. Tell Travis Hughes that you heard it right here. Remember, they're a trusted Daikin dealer over at Hughes Mechanical with a great warranty. They're located in Zachary and serve all of South Louisiana. They're one of the best in the North Shore, over in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Zachary, throughout the South Louisiana corridor. They can help you out. HughesMechanical.net and 225-658-2147. Most trusted and experienced professionals that you can find here in South Louisiana. Find them online, HughesMechanical.net. Every Wednesday we talk to our friend Jacques Doucet of WAFB. Of course, he is part of that WAFB 9 sports team, which we're looking forward to the Cecil Collins documentary that is set to debut. Huge build-up, and looking forward to watching that. I can't go anywhere now without somebody asking me about it because they saw it on the show with Jacques, and people ask, have you seen it? I'm like, no, I've seen everything you've seen, but I know the people behind it, and I have worked with Darren DeQuano on documentaries before. And I know the type of work he puts out. And if DeQuano is getting pissed at Jacques for putting out information about the documentary, that tells me that DeQuano thinks it's good. And if he thinks it's good, pop your popcorn. I mean, get ready, because it's going to be awesome. It's going to be must watch. Jacques, good morning. How are you?
good morning. I realize I live in Baton Rouge, but the traffic is next level impossible this morning. Essen, Airline, I don't know what's going on, but it's a parking lot everywhere.
Gross.
Usually takes me 20 minutes to get here. It took me like 45.
Gross.
So, anyway,
sorry. Thank you
glad
for the
to be here
commitment.
with
Thank you.
It's good to see you. So LSU last week, they exercised some demons for sure. They hang 70 on Grambling, but they do leave some door open for conversation around the defense. Before we get into all of that, tell me what your takeaway was from LSU's second game of the season and their home opener.
Well, the most discouraging thing was that Grambling on their first three possessions racked up 238 yards worth of offense. If they would have run like a trick play, if they would have faked a punt, if they would have done some things to, get you a gotcha touchdown, that's one thing. But they methodically drove the ball down the field. Touchdown on their first drive, they chip shot field goal on their second, and then missed a chip shot on their third. So basically, I don't know, Grambling kind of self-destructed to an extent on some of those drives, but that attached to the end of the Florida State game is not a good run for the defense. Now, LSU's offense just overpowered Grambling. This was a scrimmage basically from their standpoint. 10 possessions, 7 touchdowns, right? They scored a touchdown every possession. Yeah, 10 for 10.
Right.
10 for 10, the math, okay. 70. And then a safety, 72. So, Jaden Daniels threw the ball deep to Chris Hilton. That was a big question we all had after the first game. Where was Chris Hilton? And he brings the speed aspect to the wide receiver room. You heard Brian Kelly after the game saying that Chris Hilton wants to be a more complete receiver. He doesn't just want to be the speed guy that takes the top off the defense. So that was encouraging to see. The running back tandem was completely different from the Florida State game or who they decide to run. Josh Williams got, I think, 6 carries, but Logan Diggs comes back and is healthy. And then Caleb Jackson basically eats up the whole second half. So I guess the question is, does LSU trust Caleb Jackson on the road in the SEC at Mississippi State? Will he be getting a lot of carries? And is Diggs your guy too? John Emery will be back this week, but very similar to a year ago, right? He missed his first 2 games, and his debut was against Mississippi State, and I think he got a little bit of action against Mississippi State last year, but then there was the whole conditioning thing. So those were a few takeaways. I know Denver Harris started, and I know I heard you talk about it. Yes, defensive backs are going to give up touchdowns. They're scored in games. So that's going to happen. But it seemed like I guess after the initial touchdown and the pass interference a little bit later, which was maybe a ticky-tack call, or it could have gone either way, that maybe he settled in. But you heard Coach Kelly say that he wants to be coached. He didn't like watching, and that hopefully, they're on the same page with the attitude and all of that. But very interesting SEC opener coming up. Like we had talked about, there was really nothing LSU could have done this past weekend that would have really moved the needle a whole lot with the fans. This is kind of your reset button in terms of playing a team of similar talent. SEC opener, Starkville, Mississippi, early in the morning. And a much different Mississippi State team offensively than we've seen in the past. I think Will Rogers threw the ball 683 times in 2021, 610 times last year. When LSU went over there the last time, Jordy, which only 2 years ago, but was a totally different galaxy. Max Johnson was your quarterback, threw 4 touchdowns in the game. Kayshon Boutte caught 2 touchdowns in the game. And Will Rogers threw the ball 62 times that day against LSU. So he threw the ball 17 times last week. So from what I've talked to, I interviewed 3 Mississippi media guys for some coverage this week. They all said, look, they're going to throw the ball a lot more than 17 times this week. So I think they're going to test the LSU secondary. And Joquavius Marks, Woody Marks as they call him, is now the center of the offense as opposed to Will Rogers was the center of the offense in the past.
What do you make of his comments on Harold Perkins, and what do you think he'll be used as this week?
I think they're edging more and more away from what they did in the season opener. I think they're trying to find a sweet spot between trying to make him a more complete linebacker and then also him rushing off the edge a little bit more. So what did you make of it? What he said?
Well, I mean, thank you. not to me, but just everybody. I mean, it's good to hear. Like, that's obvious, right? Like, I mean, he's so good that it's obvious. Like, to me, it's hard to mess up a player like
neutralize your top player.
But it's hard to make him look lost out there. He's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to make a good player look confused.
Yeah. So I'm in a game like this, if LSU's defense gets pushed around and has a long day, then there's a problem because Mississippi State's in transition. Zach Arnett, the defensive coordinator, he gets promoted to the head coach. A defensive coordinator perhaps says, hey, we need some more physicality in this offense, less finesse. Maybe from his perspective, he sees the weaknesses in the air raid offense, and maybe they peaked with it. But last week against Arizona, they only gained 307 yards the entire game, and that included an overtime session. So early on, it seemed like Mississippi State was going to blow Arizona out, and Jaden DeLaura at Arizona, they just kind of let him play street ball, man. He just kind of runs around and chunks it, and it's either an interception or it's a 40-yard gain. But Mississippi State is still in a transition offensively where they are not hitting on all cylinders, and Will Rogers, has put up huge numbers. He's always been said to not have a very big arm. He's not a guy who really stretches the field. He can do it here and there. So I would think that that they're going to test LSU's defensive backs. I would think that, I keep hearing from several people that this is a Mekhi Wingo type game too, that, he should maybe feast in a game like this. Talked to him yesterday. He says he feels like Mississippi State, their strength is they like to run the ball. We feel like we can stop the run. And really, LSU did against Florida State. I mean, of all the things that went wrong, that wasn't really a huge problem, stopping the run against Florida State. And, Grambling popped a few last week on you. So I just think that's the fear. If you have another defensive start like you did against Grambling in an SEC contest and you're behind 17-0 in a day game where it's going to get pretty warm and you got the cowbells and all that on the road, but you're a 10-point favorite. You're supposed to win, and I do kind of wonder, is this maybe the game where LSU asserts themselves and looks like the team that we were expecting this year?
You mentioned Mason Smith coming back, and obviously what he could mean this weekend. Where do you kind of judge his health? He's a little further behind than I thought he was. I kind of thought he was going to play every snap against Florida State if he would have been available, but kind of judging him last week, he may have been a little bit more setback as more than we thought.
Yeah. One thing that Coach O used to always say that I think is true is, conditioning gets you in shape for preseason ball, and then preseason ball gets you in shape, or you try to get in shape for football, but there's no way to really emulate playing and going full go. So, I don't think he made a tackle until the first play of the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that might have been his only tackle in the game. So I know that defensive players do more things than register tackles and sacks and tackles for loss. They eat up offensive linemen for the linebackers to do other things. But, yeah, I mean, at halftime in the press box, we were kind of chatting, and we're like, man, Mason didn't really have an impact in the first half. So, maybe, as the old cliche, make the biggest jump from week 1 to week 2. But I certainly think that in a game like this, in which, Jaquavius Marks has run for 250 total in the first 2 games, they're going to feed him a lot and, try to establish. They're getting back to the old Mississippi State. The old Mississippi State was big, physical, and when LSU played them, although that LSU's won a very, very large majority of the games over the last 30 years, I think even Curly Hallman was 3-1 against Mississippi State. When you played the game afterwards, you were in the hot tub because they were big and physical, and you had been in a physical game. So they're trying to get back to that a little bit. Certainly the 2000 game in Tiger Stadium is one I remember for sure when they Wayne Matkin.
Love that one.
They called him
Fred
Chris
Smoot.
Rock. Yeah. What's that?
Fred Smoot.
Fred Smoot, yeah. The
dog pound romp. Remember they would do the sideline romp on the kickoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. That was the Brandon Tillfield and Dominic Davis took over that game.
Josh, the overtime game?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Josh
what you
Booty
saw.
playing quarter.
Yeah, and you saw Nick Saban show a little bit of emotion. It was weird. On
It was 8 o'clock game.
Yeah.
Tillfield scored the game winner. And there's a great picture of him standing over
Yeah.
Mississippi State defender. That Mississippi State defense was legit.
Yeah, they were a very good team.
They were legit, man. They were flying around that night. I mean, Smoot was a first rounder. They had a first round defensive tackle. I mean, was that Jackie Sherrill?
No, it was it was Jackie Sherrill.
Jackie Sherrill?
Jackie Sherrill and Jolie Dunn.
Yes.
The defensive coordinator. I think there was them. They had a guy named Pork Chop
Womack.
Pork Chop Womack.
That's right.
But yeah, over the years, LSU's has had their number perhaps more than any other team in the league. I remember even in '98 when LSU was struggling, State came in and LSU beat them 41-6. For the longest time, the only game that they had won was in 1999 when Jared DiNardo was on his way out, and they said on a 4th and goal, the State running back, he had hit the ground like at the 1, and then he just rolled over and then just rolled into the end zone, and they gave him a touchdown. But anyway, yeah, I mean, this is your reset button. This is getting in the SEC ball, and then similar from a year ago, when you Mississippi State jumped out on you 13-0, you rallied, and really, from Mississippi State's standpoint, their fear from their defense's standpoint is that they're not great on the edge, and they just fear that Jaden Daniels is going to scramble on them all day. And the last drive of the first half last year, you remember LSU was down 13-0. I think Jaden took off on like 3 straight runs and then threw a touchdown to Jeray Jenkins at the end of the first half there.
That's right. Lance Hurd made his debut last week. How much impact do you think he has this weekend, and how long do you think it takes before he's one of the starting 5?
Well, very similar to Emory Jones, right? I mean, Emory, he did interviews yesterday and started by the 3rd game. It was the Mississippi State game he started. Made that tackle at midfield on special teams, too, which in the preseason he said that was a very touching moment because his father passed away when he was 5 years old. And his father and his cousin, or his uncle Ludd, I think was his name, said they dreamed of watching him at midfield playing Tiger Stadium, and for him to make the tackle right at midfield was big. But I think that Hurd definitely has the confidence. We've heard about that from day one, how Coach Kelly said, I know you got a left tackle. I know who Will Campbell is. I'm going to be your left tackle way back when. But he's not going to be the left tackle. But obviously, I think he's got the confidence, the size, and you've heard Coach Kelly compliment him, and this guy's a future pro as well. So it'll be interesting. The cowbells will be clanging, and it is not going to Jordan-Hare Stadium or the Swamp or Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's not one of your bigger SEC venues, but it can get pretty loud in there, and I would expect they would have 55,000, 60,000, something like that.
If Lance Hurd's inserted and he becomes a starter, there's an opportunity where LSU becomes a really physical team, right? I mean, if this offensive line kind of steps up, and Hurd, I think he gives you like a 2-for-1 because not only do you get a new tackle, you get a new guard in Emory Jones. if they're not a power team, does the quarterback deserve to be looked at as far as somebody that could make them a playmaking team? We've talked a little bit about this week. I've also said that we're not trying to start a quarterback controversy, which seems like it's a little bit, kind of going in the opposite direction. But I'm just kind of, for instance, of the team, right? Like, I mean, I got 15 games of data on Jaden Daniels. You can win the West with Jaden Daniels. If the strength of the team is on the outside and the offensive line is not who you think they are, does Garrett Nussmeier, does he deserve more run?
Well, you just see it in terms of what was the first play. First play Nussmeier's in the second half. It's a drop back. It's a look. It's a fire 20-yard out. Who you throw it to? I forgot. Brian Thomas. One of those guys. And so there is that element in there. Now, statistically, Jaden couldn't have been any better, right? But then you're playing Grambling, and so is he going to make a 45 or a 50-yard pass down the field to Chris Hilton in an SEC game? Are those kind of things going to happen? Or are we getting back to the dig routes on the sidelines and the quick slants and the rollouts to Mason Taylor and those kind of things that we've seen in the past? So they took Jaden Daniels to SEC Media Days. He was voted the team MVP. There seems to be a very united front that Jaden's our guy, and certainly as a scrambler, he does some electric things. And the SEC West is going to be wide open, or it appears to be that way. Yeah. Even a team like Texas A&M that got embarrassed at Miami. Well, that was Miami, and it just seems like the non-conference games are not going the SEC's way. They're going to be playing each other. And I mean, I guess it's a thing people are going to discuss for a while. I mean, if it was Jaden Daniels and Ricky Collins, we have no discussion whatsoever. Right. But it's Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier, and the guy has proven he can fire the thing down the field. And your wide receivers caught the ball last weekend, although Brian Thomas had one drop, and he made up for it, caught the touchdown. But they need to catch the ball in a game like this, too.
I agree. Dante Williams, it won't be a controversy if you don't talk about it. Talking Head Show. Sorry, Dante. What'd you make of Logan Diggs?
Good, physical, straight ahead, north and south, leaped into the air.
He's anxious, bro.
Spun around. Post-game interview, he's got glasses and he's real mellow, and he said that his favorite R&B person was Mariah Carey, which don't expect to hear from a 20, 21-year-old athlete. Usher.
Old soul.
Brought up Mariah Carey and Usher.
Damn.
Which, for some students,
you can check his birth certificate.
Who is that?
That's
some
me.
people, Mariah Carey say, oh, that's that Christmas song, People like us who grew up in the 90s and the 2000s or whatever. But, I think that he's happy to be home. He came out of New Orleans. He followed Brian Kelly to Notre Dame, and now he's back at LSU. And so, is it are those two going to be the guys? Are you going to ride Logan Diggs and Caleb Jackson this weekend? I don't know. And then slip in some John Emery. Where does Josh Williams fit in? Noah Cain did the mop-up duty last week and got the game ball. We were hearing about Armani Goodwin coming back from his injury. So all these dudes back there.
Only one ball.
Yeah,
same. Even in the Kevin Falk, Rondell Mealy, Cecil, Kendall Cleveland days, you can really only play about 3, it seems like. Mm-hmm. So,
what's the latest on Cecil?
The Cecil Collins documentary will air October the 15th. It'll air at 10 o'clock on Sunday. It's a Sunday night. We chose that weekend because it's the weekend LSU plays Auburn at home. And, of course, that was 26 years ago that Cecil ran for 234, 240, whatever it was, against Auburn in Tiger Stadium. And Rondo Mealy, by the way, had like 130 in that game. That's too.
Right. Didn't he have like a big kickoff return?
Maybe so. Cecil had a kickoff return.
Okay.
Rondell might have had one too. But yeah, Cole Kubelik at SEC Media Days, I talked to him about, we were doing this, and he brought up the box score and said they ran for 370 or something. We ran for 65, 70, and we won the game somehow. Damian Craig let him down the field on the final drive of the game. There was an infamous 3rd and 2 call in that game where LSU, instead of giving the ball to Cecil, called a rollout pass with Herb Tyler, threw incomplete, and LSU had to punt. I thought that play was later in the game than what it was. It was like midway through the 4th quarter. So, but funny, real quick, an old Paul Gates story. So Paul Gates, who of course was the Mr. Investigative,
the best.
The guy that you did not want showing up at your house.
Yes, that's right.
Unless he was to help you investigate someone else. If you saw Paul Gates, it's a bad sign. So Paul Gates, and Jerry DiNardo actually saw it on TV because I saw the clip. And so somebody was getting indicted somewhere, like down at the state capitol or something. And they're walking him out and they're pounding him with questions. And Paul Gates is up there and it's, sir, what do you have to say for yourself? And the guy just says, I believe LSU should have run that ball. Just out of the blue, right? It was right after the Auburn game, they threw the ball instead of giving it to Cecil. I believe LSU should have run that ball. And DiNardo at the press conference said, yeah, some guy's getting indicted. He didn't want to talk about his own problems. So he said.
Hey, well, that's how you make fast friends.
So we're worried about my noodles, Jerry. Run the football.
So yeah, it's great. Like all this old Jerry DiNardo stuff, and I love Jerry DiNardo. I mean, I think a lot of people for 3 years. He was extremely popular.
He was until he opened the restaurant.
And the Ford commercials, right?
That's right.
Was it old Ford? He was. I love my truck. He loves his truck. It's a Ford for me. He loves that truck.
Was it Hollingsworth?
I don't know who the dealer was, but he was like a lot of heart and a whole lot of soul. Right. Buy a Ford truck and let the good times roll. They're like,
Jacques, what a memory!
He was like
recall on
That's unbelievable.
I remember he was like in the truck, and then the team was running in front of him.
That's right.
He was, it's
so
like
get him out of here. He's a bum.
DiNardo had to walk so Coach O could run.
And then I'm telling you, the noose was the restaurant. Like once he did that, he was like,
well, yeah. What are you doing?
Done with
Not a play place. Like, you're a football coach.
Sure does have a lot of time to sit at the bar at that restaurant, doesn't he?
Imagine Tiger droppings.
Well, that's another line where the fan says, well, if he wouldn't spend all his time making them commercials. It's like the commercial shoot was like a 1 hour shoot
July.
In June that happened once, but you're thinking the commercial's in real time. Like every time the commercial airs, he's in the truck.
Right. How's he have the time in the middle of the game?
It's a live spot.
Thanks for tuning in to our premium LSU content right here on YouTube. If you want more of it, subscribe below.